have a panel this afternoon of teachers who are all signed up but have participated in the past. And I've asked them to share some teaching ideas. It always feels like about halfway through the conference, it's kind of good to hear and share teacher ideas. And often that happens in breaks and lunches, right? And we don't have that opportunity. And we often provide a research session, which we didn't do this time. So this is an opportunity to hear from your colleagues, and I'm sure they'll call teachers that are going to be helping you this afternoon.
Yeah, sure. I'm Kate Suter, and
maybe at least tell what, at least where you're all from. Yeah,
I'm from Southwest Missouri, down by Springfield. And Trish, I don't see her on my screen. Oh, there she is. Trisha's from Derby, is that right? Kansas?
Yep.
And Valerie is from Lawrence, Kansas, even though I don't like to talk about that very much.
Chalk.
But the really cool thing about this conference is that the topic changes every year. So if you like the format, the presentations, the way it's set up, it's very likely you could come participate again. And the three of us and other people as well, this is a really close conference for us. It's pretty cost effective. You know, we're within a few hours drive. So we've been able to attend several times. And like Mark said, usually we talk all lunch, all breakfast. We'll go out to dinner. We'll have the research sessions, and we didn't get that. So he had kind of asked if a few of us would be willing to share some lessons that we do that kind of goes with the theme, as well as provide some discussion time. Does that kind of sum up what you're wanting, Mark? All right. So what I thought we'd do is the three of us kind of each have something to share with you. So we'll do like one, maybe give people time to chat or talk. Obviously there's the chat function, and then down at the bottom of your screen should be the reaction button. And if you click on that, the last thing, the bottom of that box is raise hand, and that should pop you up to the front. So if you want to say something, and that'll kind of keep things in order maybe. I haven't had to facilitate a lot of Zoom stuff. We were mostly in person this year, so my Zoom skills are not as good as some of you. But anyway, I'm just going to really quickly do a fast thing because it's Truman related, and because it seems to be totally 2-second review, but the kids always struggle with it. So let me find my share screen button here. Share that. This is just a station that I do when I do some of the early Cold War things. And so this is actually the modified version because it's got things underlined. I made a couple different copies because I've had inclusion and co-teachers and things like that. So just one strategy I've used is have the same document, but have some things underlined so the kids kind of know where to focus. But one question that I've added over the years to this is the introduction to Truman's address. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of Congress. The kids, they skip that. They're just like, he's just introducing himself. But then, like, I have a couple like questions to get them thinking. And they're like, well, he's talking to Congress. And I said, well, who's the president? And they're like, well, he is. Okay, so did he just say hello myself? You know, so just a really fast thing that has come up over the years. They're in question too. The kids, someone will remember from a couple years ago when they took government speaker as Speaker of the House. No one ever remembers the President Pro Tem. So that's just, oh, I have a typo in there. Oops, need to fix that. I did mean beliefs. Anyway, that's just a really fast thing. I I don't know if anybody else has an example of something, a lesson that they've done on the bigger stage, and then all of a sudden they're like, whoa, we need to take a step back here because this is a really good place to throw in a review. But now I need to stop sharing the screen. How do I do that? How do I come back to you people?
There should be like a little red button.
Oh, there it is. Stop share. Okay. All right. I don't see any hands raised. And I don't see anything in the chat. And I have one other lesson plan that I can share a little bit later that's actually from another participant we've had before, Derek, who couldn't be here this week. But if Valerie would like to jump in and share something she's done or an idea she has.
I'd be happy to. Thank you. The way I kind of approach picking and choosing things, rather than picking specific lessons, though what I just put in the Google Drive is a lesson, it can morph in many different ways. Could somebody give me a thumbs up if you can open? I tried to change all of the permissions. Good. I figured it was easier than sharing my screen just to drop the links in. This is a simulation probably many of you guys do at very different times, but it has truly become one of my students' favorites. It's a meeting of the minds, in which students basically, it's a large scale salon where people come dressed as historical characters. The historical characters list for this particular meeting of the minds is listed on the second page. And so the students research a person, the research sheet is included towards the back. I give them class time to research their person. And then when we come into the meeting, we have the set group of questions that, you know, and topics of the era to discuss. This one happens to be the Gilded Age. I've done one with the Age of Jackson as I've been thinking about this in the context of this conference. You could easily do one of these with regard to the Constitutional Convention. You could easily do one of these with FDR, and both, you know, the supporters of the New Deal and the opposition to the New Deal. You could do this a gazillion ways. It's very easily modifiable. One thing that I added to it, if you are looking at the document, I think it's the last paragraph on the first page before it gives you the list of topics. I teach advanced placement US history as well as the concurrent credit course for the University of Kansas, History 128 and 129. And I have found that requiring my students to go find and use a primary source from the person really enriches the conversation. So that's an edit that I added to this as well. I have not done this particular meeting of the minds in 2 years. 2 years ago, we lost too many days to snow days to be able to do it. And well, this past school year was COVID central, and I just didn't have the energy to pull responses out of discussions and students who were both in my room as well as at home online. So my last couple of years of students haven't gotten this. It has been an absolute, it has been wonderful for in previous years. In fact, students come in and say, when do we get to do this thing? Yes, except for the past 2 years, it's been no, but for reasons beyond my control. So any questions? Anybody else use a meeting of the minds or a salon or something like that? It's really customizable in many different places. Cool. So, and Kate, I have others as well, but you just kind of keep us moving forward. So totally, your dual enrollment kids, Kate, will loved it. And enlightenment salons, my colleague who teaches AP Euro always does an enlightenment salon, and they love it. And I forgot to put it in there, excuse me. I have a grading sheet that goes along with it. So let me drop that into the chat if I can find it here. There we go. You know, I give them extra credit for showing up in a costume. It's not required, but it's encouraged. I've had people show up in graduation robes as John Marshall, you know, with a gavel. You know, I had Jacob Reese show up with a camera, you know, and I had for the Jackson one year, somebody was representing Alexis de Tocqueville and showed up with a beret and a baguette, you know. So I mean, they can get into it as much as they want to. Oh, Melissa, a 20th century dictator tea would be fantastic. Scary, but fantastic at the same time. So it sounds like many of you have used these. For those of you who haven't, if you give them enough prep and research time, they can do it almost at any level. So there you go.
Cool. Tanya, what you got?
This year, I am going to be adding 8th grade US history to my list of classes I teach. And I have never taught junior high before. I'm absolutely terrified. So what is the timeline for in-class time to prep for something like this to make it successful?
I have only ever used this with juniors at AP US history. And so usually what I have done is I have given them the assignment, they sign up for their person. They have a couple days while I'm kind of giving the context and the background. I've given them 2 days in class to research, and then they go. You know, my first teaching job was teaching 8th grade. I would say I'd almost give them, like, I don't know, how long are your class periods, Tanya?
They're 55 minutes.
Okay. And so one of the things you might want to do, if you're looking at the research sheet, break it down a little bit further. You know, maybe you take a week on research of issues, one issue on Monday, one issue on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or maybe you pare it down to 3 issues, or, you know, something like that. I was impressed when I started teaching 8th graders that 8th graders could do a heck of a lot if I gave them the time to do it. Their depth of analysis obviously is not what an AP US history student would be, but their curiosity and their ability to blurt out what they're thinking was almost the much more of an advantage, because I could see where to direct them, whereas sometimes high school kids will just go like that. I'd give a week. Does that help? Kevin?
38 years as the middle school history teacher. I think also if you will kind of break it into blocks a little bit, you know, like maybe designate Thursday was our game days. So I would oftentimes use that as a day for the research, you know, to take them a little bit out of the routine. And then maybe have a couple of days, you know, cram sessions right before the presentation. But I agree, like close readings, you know, we were reading close read of the Gettysburg Address. Then all of a sudden one group's heads all popped up and said, he's talking about 1776. And, you know, so yes, they can do it. But again, I agree. Time is, you got to give them more time, I think, than you'd have to do well with your advanced placement or period, high school.
You might also think about pre-selecting some documents for them to use, you know, so at least, you know, for maybe the first day or two, pre-selecting, working them through together, and then having them find one piece of evidence on their own, as opposed to what I do again with AP kids. I just say, go for it, you know. Oh, and Kate's advice there is perfect. Give yourself grace. Oh my goodness gracious. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Totally.
I've always thought of Kate as a mad scientist, so I like that a lot. There's some good comments there in the chat if you've not seen it. That's good encouragement for the middle school aspect of it.
Okay, Trisha, would you like to jump in for a few minutes?
Oh, sure. We taught this past year, we taught doing synchronous teaching the whole year, which was only the high school. Middle school didn't have to do it, neither did the elementary schools. And it really took its toll on the entire staff because it was half and half, and technology, we were down. We probably lost 20 to 30 minutes a class period just with technology issues. And while I had kids online and kids in front of me trying to do the fun stuff that we did, just like Valerie, just went. So what I did, sharing with you the 19th Amendment that I do first semester with my US history kids. This isn't a real exciting thing, but it was probably the most successful thing that happened this year, both terms. And when I mean both terms, we also did a new thing. We have block scheduling. And we went to the 4x4 schedule. And if you're not familiar with that, it's 9 weeks, 9 weeks, 9 weeks. So we had to do a semester class in 9 weeks. So not only did we have to do with all of synchronous this year, we almost ended up in the Betty Ford, all of us, but we were going to be together. Anyway, so trying to get the kids in class to participate in discussion or online was a miracle at best. But this lesson, for whatever reason, they wanted to, and it was great. So to get a response, I would come home and just like, the kids talked today. And my husband was like, well, okay, aren't they supposed to? Yeah, but they did. And it was great. So what it is the 19 women's suffrage. And usually I show the video Iron Jawed Angels, which this year I had to load onto Canvas, is what we use for our website. And those that are at home would have to watch it on the website. But and those that were in class, and how I got the kids at home to watch it was I said, okay, you guys are gonna have to fast forward on your own through the big bathroom sex scene, which there's not, and I already cut it out, but that's how I hooked them on watching that. And it's how I got my kicks on that, because it was just revenge. But anyway, the intro part of it, I've got some notes here so I don't leave it out. For the introductory, for my SPED kids and ELL, you can get them to, for the 19th Amendment, what I do is intro with them, just go over don't cut out anything, the actual verbiage of it, and break it down. And what I do with my gifted kids or higher level is have them look at it and break it down for the pre-teaching part of it. Is there anything nowadays that could we get sued for? Like where it says, rewrite it in today's language. Because like when they look at it and it says shall not be denied or abridged, what does abridged mean? Because that's the first thing, the stumbling block. If you were going to rewrite this in your words, is there anything that you could get sued on? And the first thing they do is they go, well, what about this whole sex thing, or denied, or whatever? Well, what about, some people, don't they get their voting rights taken away if they commit a crime, or this, and this? And we have a whole class discussion on that. And how come? And that leads into the whole, how come some people don't? Well, what's the big deal? Well, if you don't vote, what big deal? Well, how come, why did they want their voting rights? Well, how, then well, so what? Women couldn't vote. Well, you could lose your kids, and that leads into the whole intro. and I sent the document to Therese so she could put that in the folder, but I've included 4 short YouTubes. The shortest one's 2 minutes, the longest one I think is 13. And I have them watch the old schoolhouse rock, How You Come a Bill, or the 19th Amendment, women's suffrage. And that's good for your ELL kids or your SPED kids. But the reg ed kids like to watch that, and they'll go, oh, that's so stupid. And I tell them, like, Saturday morning, that's what we watched. But I will have them, you can have them write a response to that. You can tie it into something that's in the news today, or you can, there's a ton of different things you can have them do with that just to get them thinking for an assignment, because we had to post all that stuff on the website. But some of the things, when they think, well, that has nothing to do with today. Well, currently, if you live in Pakistan, people are, it's in the constitution that you can vote, but they live in a very patriarchal society. So yes, women can vote, but they live with people that say, well, no, you're not going to go vote. So technically, it's in their constitution they can vote, but culturally they can't. Or in Syria, they can vote, but they're required to bring a photo ID. And women in that country, culturally, the religion, they cover, they're veiled, and a photo ID requires your face to be shown. So they're at a huge disadvantage. If your face isn't shown on your photo ID, they can't ID you. So they don't have voting rights. So in today, right now, there are people that cannot vote. Oh, so then it starts clicking, because they don't, our kids don't put that together because they don't have that experience. So there's some things you have to walk through them. And it ties into things that are going on today in our country, that you can have that discussion if you set that up in your classroom on having that respectable discussion that I'm not going to go through, because we all know how to do that. But there's some YouTubes on there. There's 4 of them that are short that you can throw in there. And then I put a worksheet that our department uses that has movie questions, a guided reading, and then some things that tie into some amendments. And then the last part on there are some primary sources that have to do with Kansas being one of the progressive states, because once upon a time, Kansas used to be the first progressive state. I know. Kansas was the first state that had the first woman that led a lot of things. It was the first state in the Union to have a referendum on women's suffrage. There was the first feminist movement that had a 50-50 quorum with men's support. I mean, it just blows your mind. Nowadays, I don't like to say it, but we're the first state that puts people on the news that, and we have a couple of representatives I don't want to name by name, but there's 4 sites with primary sources that go back to 1859 with women leaders, that newspapers, lots of cool stuff on there that hopefully, I don't think you have to have the membership I have. I think it's purely Kansas historical sites, but lots of cool stuff on there that kids like to go, way, no way, and argue with you, and they can see it, and it's just cool stuff. But anyway, that's more discussion that I've ever had before. And I had kids messaging me at night on, look what I found and stuff in my family history. And then we went blank again, but I had them for a while. But Valerie, also, I just wanted to give you a hard time. My nephew is going to KU Lawrence I know we were 50-50. He was going to go to Manhattan, but he chose KU. We're being supportive because we're big K-State fans, but we're being supportive.
It's okay. So he's going to be a 9th grader, or not a 9th grader, freshman at KU?
Freshman.
Well,
we might even go up and visit.
Well, there's a lot of fun stuff to do in Lawrence, and you can even find some, wildcats here occasionally. So there you go.
We might even go see a basketball.
See, there you go. So Kate, what's your question?
Since you said you did this all on Zoom and technology is an issue, you also mentioned you had an edited version of that movie. Did you make that yourself and provide it to the kids? Is it available somewhere? That sounds
It is.
super helpful. And now I'm going to rubber my hand.
I have it on Canvas. What I ended up doing is I can get it to you.
I am on Canvas.
Oh, I'll just send it to you.
Cool. We'll figure that out, and maybe we can share with other people as well.
Yes.
All right. Are we sparking any ideas? Have any speakers sparked ideas? At the end of the week, Mark showed us one example just before lunch of a lesson plan some teachers had done. We'll fill out like a form with our stuff, and then the webmaster, who I think is Mark, will put those online. So if you're starting to get some ideas or anything like that, is there something you want to jump into and discuss for a few minutes? So I've got one more lesson I can share, but
Oh, I just
people could talk too.
dropped one more thing into the chat. So sorry, I jumped ahead. Can I make a statement on this one? Maybe sparking some, thanks, Kate. This is what's called a 6 degrees of separation. Oh, and by the way, I would recommend making a copy of all of these for yourselves on your Google Drives, so we're not all trying to adjust everybody's work. Again, I did not invent this, but it is really incredibly useful for me with chronological reasoning. It's called the 6 degrees of separation. I'm actually going to share my screen on this one just to, if it works, share. There we go. All right. Make this bigger. Usually this is just a blank one. But I have done these in class. You put a starting event here, you put a concluding event here, and then the students have to connect the events through 6. One that I use with my students is from the ratification of the Constitution, 1787-88, to the Revolution of 1800. How do you get from one to the other? Another one is the 1850s. So you go from the Compromise of 1850 to Fort Sumter. How did you get there in 6 different events? It's very malleable, as to how you do it. But the students, so they would type their first event in here. How is it connected to the previous event? Okay. And then how are they connected? And then event 1 has to be connected. It is this, and this is the connection between event 1 and event 2, event 2 and event 3, 3 and 4, 5, all the way down. It takes some time for students to do this, particularly at the beginning, but it keeps them from making wide historical leaps that sometimes are unwarranted, particularly when they put things out of chronological order, and you can call them on it. I've used this as well as a basis for essays. So here's how did we get from one to the other? Well, they've already decided what evidence is most important to them. One of the things that again, teaching AP, you never have enough time in a timed essay to communicate all of your knowledge. So I tell them, you have to pick and choose and explain the best information that helps support your argument. A 6 degrees does that. And so I threw that out there as a template, just because you can use it in so many different ways. Again, tying it back to the conference, I think you could do this not just with historical chronological events. You could also do this with, this Supreme Court case to this Supreme Court case. How did the court move? I was thinking about this with this morning with the Jimmy Carter stuff, as well as with the Clinton Library yesterday. How many Congresses did they have to go through? How many different pieces of legislation? Well, what are the major steps to get from point A to the final piece of legislation? You can really break down to how a bill becomes a law at each step if you wanted to, or a Supreme Court justice's nominations, like the retirement of one. How do you get to the confirmation of another? So sorry, I dropped that in there too fast, but it's a useful tool.
Any questions or comments? You're welcome to type or use that reaction button to raise your hand. Oh, Tinker and student speech issues. Yeah, kids love Supreme Court cases that we can actually say. St. Louis had one, Hazelwood versus Kuhlmeyer, which kind of brings up a comment I was going to make about Trisha's lesson with those Kansas things. That's been my professional development goal last year, and I think it'll be this year too, that we have to do for school each year. But mine is to add local history to my units. One, because I've become like one of the younger members of people who do history in my community, but just to make those connections. Like I found a 1929 book on our county that talked about the Freedmen School. And so when we're talking about that Reconstruction, I'm like, guys, it was here. And there's a poster actually of the teacher who had my room before I did, whose mother was the first Black teacher in our district. He was one of our first students after desegregation. And there's a poster of him with his mom at the school for our Black students. And then there's a poster of him in high school that has my dad in it as well. They were in different grades. But just that simple question, guys, why did my dad not go to elementary school with Dr. Ford? You know, you just can really bring it home. And so I recommend, if you're interested in doing those kind of things, just little things, check Facebook and see if your county has a Facebook group. Ours is super active. And so that's been helpful. I can find pictures of like any era going back to Reconstruction for our community. But that's something I really love to do.
And states too, both county and state for each area. They're really good about, a lot of the time they focus on anniversaries and different things on this day and things like that. And those can really be incredible resources that capture attention.
I've even used some of the Truman libraries. They'll post like, I forget now what it was. It's something thematic like Truman Tuesdays or something. But they'll do a document. And there was one day, there was a diary entry that Truman had come to my town. But you see something that allows you to make a connection, even just to your region, your state, your area. And that can kind of, bring that relevancy. I'm going to ask Therese to just set up a quick poll. It's just a yes or no question, so I kind of get an idea of how much discussion you guys want to do. So if you'll take a second. Oh, wow, we're like half and half. Okay, yeah, we're like truly half and half. That's cool. I like the different things, and I've tried to like bring up, some of these are pretty in depth. I'm going to drop a link to a constitutional convention from a guy in St. Joseph, Missouri. That's a really cool lesson based on the Constitution Center that he shared with me. But I also tried to do the like just brief ideas too, because your lesson plan for the week should truly be something you can use. Like, whatever you're going to do with your kids in your classroom, that should be your lesson plan. You know, don't try to do something that is going to take up a bunch of your time and then not be able to use it. So for those of you who don't really have ideas yet, is there a topic or a president or a I don't know, is there an idea that you'd really like to make a new lesson about and you want to see if other people have ideas for you? And I'll let you look through the link to Derek's. He always has involved, in-depth, high-level stuff. So he shared this one with me. Oh, this isn't. Is
I
yours
can
guys
answer.
cut off?
Yeah, mine's okay.
Yours is okay. Okay.
I can answer Donna's question. There is a template. It's back. I added it at lunchtime to our page with all the resources. So it's a very simple Word template. There's nothing too extravagant there. Actually, with most templates, try to keep it as simple as possible. And if you do, we really encourage you to try and use primary sources. Sometimes people prefer to link to them. That's probably better than embedding them, because then I've got to go download it and find it. But either way, it ultimately works. But we do need you to give credit if you're taking it, you know, from another library or from the Library of Congress or wherever. Please give the credit or the link to where that is, so I can check that out and make sure there's no copyright or anything like that. But those are just emailed to me. I don't think it says that on the template, but they're just emailed to me. And then I take care of it. If you're doing the college credit, yes, it's part of the college credit option to do a lesson plan. So it is optional for those that are not doing college credit, but I would encourage you to do it. It gets it on the website. We publish it on our website along with the 400 lesson plans that we have. So you can look there for ideas too. And so it goes on the website with your name on it. So that might be something good for your resume down the road. And the target audience is your students. So if you've got third graders. If you've got seniors. And we just hope that it relates in some way to this year's theme for the conference. But you can do any president, the Constitution. We're pretty broad about that. I do not see a template, even though I'm on the Truman. It's at the very top of the page. Let me get the link again. It says lesson plan template at the very top of the page on this link that I'm going to share again. And it opens a Word document. So it's sometimes with those, it doesn't open a new window, it just automatically downloads it. So you have to look for that. Usually it's in the top right window that you just open the file and then save it. Because it's a Word document, I try to avoid using a PDF for that because you have to fill it out and not everybody can fill out a PDF. But if you want to save it as a Word document, save it as a PDF, whatever you need to do, and then you just email it back to me. So it's pretty straightforward. It hasn't changed from previous years. So if it's got some wrong dates on it, that's why I just saved as and moved on. And if you want to do more than one lesson, that's fine too. And like I said, it's something for you to use with your students. So that means it's something useful to you. And I don't know if any of the other teachers have more ideas, more discussion. This was really great, but you guys want to wrap things up? We've still got a few minutes, so no pressure there.
I just shared one last thing. That is it started as a desperation for my African American history on-level students, thinking, how in the world do I give a final exam when I haven't seen them in my classroom? And it turned out so wonderfully that I then modified it for an after the AP exam project for my AP students. I love podcasts. I think probably many of you love listening to podcasts as well. And I just gave them a whole bunch. This is the one for my AP students. Just gave them a whole bunch of podcasts that I've listened to with the links. All of them are free. There's Bagman, of course, which is about Spiro Agnew. The Slow Burn are about 2 impeachments, Watergate and Clinton. You know, so we're getting into presidential issues and use of power. And they just filled out analysis forms, but had to relate it back then, of course, in this case, to what the analysis form is at the very end, by the way, and I got it offline somewhere. It forced them to tie things back to what they had used through the full year. When I did this initially for first semester African American history, I only gave them the first 2 podcasts, the 1619 Project and then White Lies. They could listen to, however, we differentiated it in saying, if you listen to 1 episode and write a review, you get a C, 2, you get a B, 3, you get, an A on your final exam, but you have to tie it back to the course. It was incredible. And it was a way of assessing their learning without using a traditional test. And so, I mean, there are 1,001 podcasts out there. You could modify this in any way, shape, or form for anything you wanted to look at. So, and again, I think this would be very applicable for any student, whether you're in middle school, whether you're in high school, whether you're on level high school, whether you're college level courses in high school. You just change the different parameters. I did give them time in class to do this because we were after the AP exam and filling time. But I also did that with my African American history students as well. I made sure that every one of the podcasts they could listen to was free, so they didn't have to pay and they could listen. We do have school issued computers, so technology was not a barrier on this one. The kids could use their school computer. If you don't have school issued computers, it might be a little more difficult, but there you go. It was amazing. So there you go.
Kate, do you want to talk about the link you just sent in the?
Yeah, I'm working on making it shareable. I thought it had anyone with the link can share, so that'll be up in a second. But I know a lot of you have state tests, government tests, things like that. And so I was just looking to see if I had any other ideas, see if this works. But I'll fix it if I need to. And this is just a quick thing I came up with. I had the kids make a bingo board with the numbers 1 through 27, except don't use 2. And then I just, pulled out the text. We had a graphic organizer of the amendments and I just cut it apart. All right, I'm still working on it. I'll get you guys a link, I swear. Let me just make a copy. Anyway, it was super fast, super easy, super low prep because I did not have to do anything except use the graphic organizer they already had of their amendments. And then we just played bingo to review.
And I just dropped in a link. We had a teacher a lot. It's actually an older piece on our website, but it gets used a lot. And that is that link there to the 3 branches of government activity. So it doesn't really refer to any specific president or anything like that. It just breaks down. It's designed more for elementary, but sometimes those things can be a good review. So I just dropped that link in there too. That was created by an independence teacher probably a decade ago now. So it looks a little old, but the content is still good. How's that? And so that's kind of a good resource, and maybe it's something you can just share with another teacher or something like that. That's what this session is about, is to share resources. So we're right at 2:45. I want to thank Kate and Valerie and Trish, and in absentia, Derek, because he provided materials too. Any questions or any feedback from any of you, the teachers that are still with us, of how they deal with the 3 branches or how they deal with presidential overreach, some of the things we've talked about, war powers, inherent powers, any of those things that you already do, or share ideas of maybe even you're thinking of that, even if it's even if you don't want to speak up. I just saw that Elizabeth said she uses USB Nixon, absolutely. And some thank yous from people. And you can even unmute yourself and talk too, so.
This really does feel like being in the classroom. Crickets, crickets.
It's late in the afternoon. I'm ready for my British cup of tea here. It's tea break at 3 o'clock for me.
Do you have a scone too?
I don't. And in the north of England, we say scone, not scone.
Scone,
That's the south of England, and we would never dare to say that.
I've only been to the south of England. Sorry about that, Mark.
It's the dialect issues are strong. And then Michael added he's done a mock congress when speaking of the first article, and he's asked if you want to send him an email if you'd like to see it. Any other comments, questions?
I've been digging through my Google files for some general stuff because I was like, okay, we all have to teach the Constitution and stuff.
Right, right.
I'm a little embarrassed about this, but when I was a new young teacher, I set the Bill of Rights to the 12 days of Christmas. I also made my kids go caroling to offices that would allow us, and one time the cafeteria on microphone. Anyway, if you want that, I can drop a link in there. I just found it. I haven't seen that in a.
One of my colleagues used to do calculus caroling. And my classes, we sing along with World War I songs, courtesy, of course, of another Truman Conference, where we were introduced to all these wonderful
World War I
recordings.
songs. Yeah. That guy was quite a character. That's funny. All right. Any other final comments, thoughts, ideas?
I'm looking for the link. I'll put it in here, so don't close out if you're
We will not close
waiting
out.
for
We'll
me.
hang on.
If
I'll
you
wait.
don't want it, it's not that great. So if you don't want it, feel free to.
And I changed my background and nobody commented. Those are not outside the building. That's an old photograph, but they are inside the building on display. Those are Truman's Senate Chryslers, 2 Chryslers that he bought, one for him and one for Mrs. Truman, that are on display and on U Museum. And Kate's dropped the link in there for the, that was for Constitution, Kate?
The first 12 amendments.
Okay.
And I just tried to make it fit. And the kids, they hated it, but you know how kids are. You remember maybe singing the quadratic formula. Like,
right.
I mean, they get mad at you until they take the test and you see them over there going.
Yeah.
And so anyway.
Gotta do what you gotta do. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for the teachers for particularly for putting themselves on the block and stepping up and doing that. I really appreciate it. It was some great ideas there. I tried to save them as I could, so I will, if with their permission, I will try and add those to the resource page.